Hello, hello, hello. Coming at you live from New York. This is Spirit Matters, your daily spiritual check-in with the Bhakti Center. My name's Dal Guranga. I'm here with the Chuta Gopi, and we are glad to be with you. Thank you for tuning in wherever you are in the world. There's people tuning in from Australia, from Europe, from Asia, from across the United States, from South America, from Canada. We're so glad that you're here. If you want to write to us and tell us your Spirit Matters story, write to us at spiritmatters@bhakticenter.org. We love hearing from you. We've been announcing this week, Chuta Gopi is co-leading a India pilgrimage this fall. If you've been hearing it and haven't signed up yet, get with the program. India pilgrimage this fall. Rajasthan, Govardhan Eco Village, Rishikesh, Vrindavan, storytelling, beautiful temples, kirtans, life-changing experiences, skydiving, bungee jumping, discotheques. Not all of those things are included in the trip, but most of them are. That's happening this fall. And I'm leading a wisdom course, Awakening the Self, taking place at the end of this month on Saturday mornings, Eastern time. So maybe your time is different. Awakening the Self, go to bhakticenter.org. It's on the homepage. Awakening the Self, a 6-week wisdom course on the foundational principles of spiritual life and bhakti yoga. This just in, Kimberly just announced, today is episode 200. This is the 200th episode of Spirit Matters. That's pretty epic, right? We've been doing this for a while. Good job, everybody. Celebrate. Thanks for being here. If this is your first episode, you got to go back and watch the first 199 in order for this one to make sense. So we'll see you in a year. That's not the case. You can join at any time. But we're glad that you're here. Thanks for everybody who's been with us from the beginning. Some of you have been here from the beginning. And that's really cool. Achuta's been here from the beginning. How you doing this morning, Achuta?
I'm here. I'm blessed.
She's here and she's blessed. That's beautiful. I'm here. I'm blessed. I'm grateful. And anything else before we get going? Launch in, start? No, we're ready to go. We've been reading the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And where do we leave off? You want to do a recap? You want to orient us for today, or you want me to?
We've been talking about the disciplic succession, the tradition of parampara. We've been talking about how it is okay to have a tradition, especially when it comes to spirituality, because we don't approach anything else without a teacher, a professor, a mentor, a guide. And so spirituality should not be different. You shouldn't just think, you know what, I can figure this all out myself. It's kind of how the mind tricks you. So we've been speaking about that. We've also been speaking about the idea of things being fantastic. We spoke about how things should be fantastic, how Krishna knows us through and through, better than we know ourselves, better than we know any other lives that we might have had. We were talking about getting in touch with the true self. We've been talking about how if there isn't a new year, new me, we can kind of uncover the priceless diamond of the true self underneath all of the conditioning. And that's where we left off.
A lot of good stuff in there. Kimberly also wrote in the chat where we did say that we also pick up that Sydney wrote a question yesterday. If I figure out that I'm putting Krishna on hold, well, somebody just put 1,000 sun emojis in the chat, at 200 sun emojis in the chat, and boosted that comment. Okay, I'm back on track. We have a live Zoom studio audience, if you didn't realize, here on our Spirit Matters podcast. We do this live. We're live right now. Well, not right now when you're listening, but at the time of this recording. Hare Krishna. Sydney wrote, if I figure out that I'm putting Krishna on hold, how can I stop doing this? Because yesterday we were talking about in each moment we have the option of inviting Krishna closer to us or pushing Krishna away. forgetting Krishna or remembering Krishna. And there's that recommendation, which originally appears in the Padma Purana, but then gets repeated by Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar Devotion, that always remember Krishna, never forget him. So there are so many rules and prohibitions, the do's and the don'ts. In fact, in the Ashtanga yoga process, yama and niyama literally means the do's and the don'ts, or the don'ts and the do's, meaning that there are things you should do. You should study. You should practice truthfulness. You should be clean in body and mind. You shouldn't steal. You shouldn't, uh, um, you know, collect more than is necessary for yourself, the do's and the don'ts. And they say, of all the do's and the don'ts, you should remember Krishna. That's the number one thing you should do. And you should never forget Krishna. That's the number one thing you shouldn't do. And so, and we've talked about it, even if we're performing our devotional spiritual activities, but it's not in a mood of trying to please Krishna, then it may look spiritual on the outside, but internally it's actually just decorating our ego or moving us further away from God, because the mood in which we're doing it is a little bit off. And even if we are stumbling, fumbling, bumbling, and everything looks a mess on the outside, our sincerity is our constant course correcting factor. And if we're remembering Krishna in this moment, those are the prayers of Queen Kunti that we shared. You shared many times, is that even in the greatest of calamities, if I'm remembering Krishna, then bring it on. Let those calamities come again and again, because it's in those calamities of life that I can remember Krishna. And so always remembering Krishna, never forgetting Krishna, and choosing in moment, how am I remembering Krishna in this moment? How am I seeking the hand of God in this moment? And Sydney asked a really beautiful question. If I figure out that I'm putting Krishna on hold, so I realize, yep, I'm forgetting quite often, and I'm choosing to push Krishna away, and I have a tendency to isolate myself, or I, am, yeah, sort of just getting wayward more often than I would like. How do I stop doing this? So knowing better doesn't mean that we always do better. How do I know better and do better? Over to you, Chuta.
Oh,
I just set up the questions. You give us this
that
substance.
was an extensive setup, bro.
Yeah.
Like I
I
was just
am
like, okay,
we are
we're
form
going for
we are form and substance. I'm the form, you're the substance.
it. I kind of think that we overcomplicate it a lot.
We or me.
Every one of us. What? Is this a trick? This is a trap. Episode
Because it's
200
something
is
it's
a
something that
trap.
I have a tendency to do.
I do feel like we overcomplicate it. It can be as simple, not necessarily easy because it is a constant, but it can be as simple as how we build up any relationship. Um,
Mm.
if if you text me, Doyle, and I never ever ever text you back, at a certain point you're going to get the message. And so, when Krishna is making time for us, and it seems as though we just cannot find any time in our day to make time for Krishna, Krishna will get the message. And so Krishna is very eager to give us what we are showing we want. So sometimes we might say we want one thing. Oh, Krishna, I just want you, but really, our actions are showing something very, very different. And so I think it is as simple as being as conscious as we would be in any other relationship. Sachinandan Maharaj made a very, very powerful point once. And he was saying, many times we will wake up in the morning thinking, oh, I must respond to this email or I must respond to that person. Otherwise, there's a threat that that person won't speak to me anymore. And I value that person. So now I'm going to make time in my day to respond to that email, to check in with this person, to respond to that person, to respond to that text message. And we've all been there, where the people are getting on our case because we may or may not be as quick to respond as they would like. But how many times has Krishna reached out to us and I'll respond later? Do we believe in the alternative? Um, I say that one of the greatest impediments to mantra meditation or chanting japa is the thought that I've got time. Do I believe in the alternative? I usually ask myself, what's the worst that could happen? But do I believe in the worst that could happen? I've been living through it. I, I've been living through what is the worst that could happen. The worst that could happen is that I forget, filled with this amnesia, which feels unbreakable. Do I actually believe in it? Do I believe that this is the worst that could happen? That I forget me, Krishna, and my relationship with him. So this verse, many births, both you and I have passed, I can remember them all, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy, reminds me that I have a severe case of spiritual amnesia. And I cannot keep telling myself, what's the worst that could happen? Because the worst is happening.
Mm. I thank you. Thank you for that. It's what I'm getting from you is the idea that our choices in many ways reflect our beliefs. And sometimes we don't connect those dots, that our choices reflect our beliefs. So like the idea of, like, if you have a japa practice or meditation practice and you put it off, there's a belief that I don't need this and I'll be okay without it. Or I like you said, I've got time. I got time. One sadhu or saintly person mentioned that Maya's greatest weapon or trick against us is procrastination, is the feeling that I'll get to it later today. I'll get to it tomorrow. I'll get to it tomorrow. I'll get to the next day. I'll get to it in a later season or whatever. And I think that the hallmark of a strong spiritual life and the idea of sadhana is that you do something consistently, no matter how small it is. Um, and I think in Sydney's question, it's so beautiful. If I figure that I'm putting Krishna on hold, how can I stop doing this? You're doing it just by asking that question. Like, that is a remembrance of Krishna. And I think that the way that we build a stronger remembrance towards Krishna is just do a little remembrance every day, and you build something into it. It's like, if I want to do yoga every day for an hour, I don't start by doing yoga every day for an hour. I might just start once a day, rolling out my mat, bending over my knees, saying Hare Krishna, and that's it. And just build up a habit of just like every day I roll my mat and I stand on it, I bend over my knees, and then I build up 5 minutes and 10 minutes. And so I think that for us, as you said, Achuta, like, we overcomplicate things sometimes and think it's got to be this big, elaborate remembrance, but it can just be so simple. And I think, Srila Prabhupada exemplified that so beautifully when you listen to his conversations or when he would go on his morning walks, you know, and he would just see things and connect it to Krishna. Radhanath Swami does this really, really sweetly. Like Radha Murlidhar in the Bhakti Center, Radharani has her hand palm facing out. And when you, throughout the world, you see various deities of Radharani, and her hands are in different positions. Sometimes they're offering a garland to Krishna. Sometimes one hand's offering a garland. Sometimes two hands offering garland. In Manhattan in the Bhakti Center, her palm is facing out, and Mara said it's because she's giving blessings. And so one day he was going for a walk in the streets of New York, and there are, everyone's walking around, and there is the sign, the street walking sign that says go, or there's a person walking, or there's that hand, that big red hand telling you stop, don't walk. And he said that's Radharani's hand giving blessings to everyone in New York City. And so it's now like every time you walk around and see a street sign, it's like you're feeling Radharani's blessings in your life, you know? And so it's just the simplest things where we look out and we can just remember, something reminds us of our beloved. And so I think that remembrance, that that question is itself a remembrance. And we just learn to catch ourselves more often.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I want you to think way back
Okay, here
to
we
when
go.
you
This is this
first
is this is exciting and nerve-wracking.
to when you first started kind of speaking with Rasika Gopi.
Ooh, it's getting more nerve-wracking.
How often did you speak to her?
We did a lot of emailing.
How often did you email her?
Often. It was, well, there was frequency and there was also length.
That was my next question. How long were these emails?
So sometimes it'd just be a couple times a day, but they'd be extensive.
Sometimes they would just be a couple of times a day, but they would be extensive, which means that
Yes.
sometimes they were more than just a couple of times a day.
Yes.
Why do we treat Krishna differently? And that for me is the overcomplication that I get in my mind. I tell myself, you just start with something small. Who in the world goes into a relationship with? Start with just listen, just say hi. You'll be all right. We would turn around and run the other way and call the person toxic and a narcissist and all of the new psychiatric words that we've learned over the past few years. We would slander the heck out of that person if they came and they were like, oh, I really want to have a relationship with you and I kind of want it to be lifelong. I'm like, okay, great. And they're like, actually, but I kind of just want to start with saying hi. It's like, well, are we not going to say anything else this day? No, we're not. Well, why? Because I'm busy, duh. I think if we interacted with somebody like that in a relationship, like, I don't think this relationship is what you want. And that's okay. I think your job might be more important right now, like your family might, like, you've got a lot on your plate, and I want that to be okay for you. But I think that this relationship is gonna have to wait till later, till you can give me the time that I deserve. Huh.
Hmm.
So sometimes, I feel like it doesn't have to be a big to do, but we can enter into that constant conversation with Krishna. And it is as easy as you go throughout your day. Oh, Krishna, I have no idea what's happening in this day. I don't know what's going on, but I know that you're in charge. So they don't have to be fancy emails, but they can be multiple emails.
Hmm.
We can make them extensive. It is as easy as speaking our hearts to the one who will understand them better than anyone else.
Hmm. Yeah. Thank you for bringing in that perspective. On one hand, there's the idea of just like, start something small, do something every day consistently. And then there's the other hand of like, how can I regularly bring in remembrance into my life? But it doesn't have to be fancy and it doesn't have to be grand. So like we have our sadhana. Sometimes we have like very specific spiritual practices that we do. Like we're going to sit down, we're going to chant japa, we're going to sit down, we're going to offer incense on our altar, or we're going to, you know, formally offer some prayers or something like that, something more formal or structured. I would say, I wouldn't say formal, but I would say structured. But then there's also just like the day-to-day continuous remembrance that we can bring into our life that doesn't have to be structured, that doesn't have to be fancy, that doesn't have to be anything other than Krishna, I don't know what I'm doing right now. Or Krishna, this is bring it to Krishna. There was once a pastor that talked about the idea, or I think it was Jai Jagannath would quote this of Gaur Govinda Maharaj, that I think he would say something to the effect of like, we should sit down every day and share how our day went with Krishna. Just the idea of like, you sit down and you call a friend at the end of the day, tell them how it went. It's like, just sit down and tell Krishna how your day went, you know? Just like share whatever you're going through, your struggle, and just like on a regular basis, flex that muscle of remembrance, of just thinking of Krishna, just bringing it into your mind, bring it into your consciousness. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. Doesn't have to be some big fancy, you know, offering of a lotus flower garland constantly, but it can just be remembering in a particular moment. And that's beautiful. And I think it's because we're reading the 4th chapter of the Gita, and we've been kind of jumping around a lot of these initial verses, but a little bit later on, Krishna mentions that verse is all surrendered to me, I award them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Prita. The idea of that when we start to make that effort towards remembering Krishna, Krishna starts to reciprocate and show up more and more and more. And so it's thank you for bringing that perspective. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And, we have, because it is a live Zoom room, there are so many kind of points and questions that are coming up in the chat. And yes, but isn't everything we do every day done on his name? Our work, our walks, our dreams, our prayers, our everyday, everything belongs to him. And that is true. And I will be the first to be really honest and say, no, everything I do all day isn't done in his name. And I love him to death. But I can tell you there are sometimes I'm walking and that's for me. I haven't said, oh, Krishna, I'm dedicating this every breath to you. I'm trying, but I still love me more. So this life, this journey is a practice in trying to remember how to love Krishna more than I love me. Because the point is, it comes down to usually, I love me more. I'm going to tend to me first. I am that selfish. I'm trying to work my way out of this addiction to my own self. It takes time, but I'm trying to remember that relationship and to treat it like a relationship that deserves my heartfelt respect.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, it's interesting when the idea of doing something for myself, I think from a from a place of yoga philosophy, or the idea like Bhagavad Gita, like what is the self and who am I? And oftentimes we think we're doing something for ourself, but actually, loving Krishna is the greatest thing we can ever do for ourselves, because the dharma of the soul, Jivara Swarupa Hoy Krishna Nityadas, we are all eternal servants of that loving supreme person. Krishna Akila Rasamrita Murti, that Krishna is not just some Hindu god, but Krishna is the you can even, Krishna is a person, but you can also expand out and just think of the idea of God as the supreme reciprocator of all relationships, right? We're all so unique and variegated. We all have our little friends and our cliques and people that we get along with. I have people that are single and they're looking for a partner, and they're like, I'm not so into that person, or this person, I'm looking for this kind of person. Like, we all have our likes and interests. Like, Krishna is interested in everyone. And Krishna has a side to his personality that clicks right with you. And so that is the definition of God as a person. That is Akila Rasamrita Murti, the full embodiment of relationship. And that is the definition of who Krishna is, that he clicks with everyone. There's a side of his personality that has a loving exchange with every living being. And it is our dharma, the nature of the soul, to connect with that loving person. But when we become encased in matter, we misidentify. That's the name of false ego, ahamkar. I am the doer. I have a false ego. There's a real ego. There's a real me. And that is the real me. That is the eternal spark of Krishna's energy. But I think that I am my body, or my mind, or my reputation, or my identity in this world. And therefore, I don't, because the nature of the soul is to serve, like Bob Dylan sang for us. It may be the devil, it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. And so I think I'm just taking care of myself, but actually I'm serving my body, my mind, my reputation, the opinions of other people, my stomach, or my head, or my sexual urges, or my false ego, or my reputation. Like, those are the things that we're actually serving. And the question that Krishna's saying is that, who are you going to serve? Where are you going to direct? And Prabhupada would say, Prabhupada says this in the preface to the Nectar of Devotion. It's so beautiful. Where can we direct that serving tendency, the tendency to love, in a way that brings us joy? And so I really think it's a confusion on the part of living entity. I mean, you can call it selfishness, but it's really a confusion about where am I going to find joy, and having false masters, in our life, and thinking, really, we think we're independent, making choices for ourselves, but actually it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm actually under the thumb of material energy that's directing me here, there, and everywhere. And my real freedom and independence is directing it back towards that supreme source of relationship with whom my soul can find the peace and love and connection that it's really looking for.
And that's exactly, what you said was exactly what Arjuna has said. It's a confusion. Now I'm confused about my duty, and I have lost all composure due to miserly weakness. I've been serving the wrong people, things, ideas.
Yes. Good
Now,
connection.
Krishna, fine, tell me for certain what's best for me. We're confused, and there's no shame in being confused.
Yeah.
The miracle is in the honesty.
Beautiful connection. I love mentioning that that's ultimately Arjuna's confusion is a role confusion. It's an identity confusion, like it's really a who am I question, and what should I be serving, and what does it mean to serve, and what does it mean to be doing the greatest good. Thank you for bringing that in here. Thank you all for tuning in. We've hit our time today. We keep it short and sweet, and we got Kimberly. So if you like to take notes, if you like to wrap up a few takeaways and bring them with you wherever you go, tune in, get out your notepad, turn up the volume. Kimberly's got a few takeaways for us, and then we're going to wrap this up.
All right, takeaways. The course correcting factor is our sincerity and honesty. Our choices reflect our beliefs. Do a little remembrance every day. The simplest things can remind us of our beloved. And loving Krishna is the greatest thing we can ever do for ourselves.
Thank you. Do a little remembrance every day. That's what I said. And then Chuta was like, do a lot of remembrance every day. Spread throughout the day. Don't insult Krishna. Do it. But it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be fancy. It can just be a simple boom. In this moment, Krishna, I'm remembering you. Whew. Did it. One of my favorite things that Prabhupada ever said, Srila Prabhupada, for those who don't know, is wrote and translated and commented on the Bhagavad Gita that we read, and was a saint in the Bhakti movement, and shared spiritual love and Bhakti around the world. He's no longer with us in the flesh, but he said that one day you'll feel, he was sitting in the warm sun, I believe in Mumbai, and he said one day you'll feel the rays of the sun to be like the warm embrace of your lover. It's like that's remembrance. That's remembrance. Krishna's hugging me through the sunshine. Krishna is, what's your takeaway, Chuta? That's my takeaway. Krishna's hugging me through the sunshine. Just keep looking for it.
That I want to remember that Krishna is a person, and that I have a relationship with this person, and I'd like to give that relationship what it deserves.
Yeah. Thank you. Beautiful. Well, thank you all for being here. If you're here, you practiced remembrance today. You did it. Good job. Thank you so much. We got a favor to ask of all of you right after you listen. If you haven't already, please go wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star rating. Go to where you don't listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star rating. If you're listening on Spotify, go to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating and a review. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go over to Spotify, give us a 5-star review. And if you've already done that, find a friend who wants to go on and give us a 5-star review. We love hearing from you. It just helps us share what we're doing and connect with more people. And we want to grow and increase our spiritual family. So thank you again for being here. We will see you all next time, same place. Thank you and bye-bye.